Todd Chrisley's journey through prison, faith, and family turmoil continues to draw emotion and reflection, but no moment has resonated more deeply than his admission that he cried himself to sleep on his first night behind bars. Speaking with raw honesty, he described a night filled with fear, disbelief, and anger at God, a feeling that he had been abandoned in the darkest season of his life. His story, while personal, has become a larger narrative about resilience, regret, faith, and the relentless human desire to rise again after unimaginable adversity. Todd has always been known for his outspoken personality, a mix of humor, confidence, and emotional candor that made him a magnetic figure on television. But even his strongest supporters acknowledge that nothing could prepare him for the reality of walking into prison for the first time. The world may have seen a public figure entering a new chapter of legal consequences, but Todd saw something else entirely. He saw the collapse of a life he worked years to build, the separation from the family he adores, and the beginning of a chapter that felt like punishment beyond anything he had expected. That first night, he said, broke him in ways he had never experienced before. He recalled the sound of the cell door closing, a sound that echoed like a final judgment. Until that moment, he had held on to hope that something would change at the last second, that an appeal or intervention or miracle would shift the path he was being forced to take. But as the door locked, reality hit him with such force that it left him breathless. Alone, confused, and terrified, he admitted that he lay down on the hard prison bed and cried until sleep overtook him. There was no comfort, no reassurance, only the overwhelming weight of what his life had become. More than sadness, however, Todd said that he felt anger. He described being angry at God, angry at the justice system, angry at the perceptions that had shaped his case, angry at the choices he made, and even angry at the people who he believed betrayed his trust. But the anger at God, he explained, was the one that surprised him the most. Faith had been a guiding force throughout his life, a source of strength in difficult seasons and a compass in moments of confusion. Yet in prison, he questioned everything he thought he understood. He asked why he had been placed in such a situation, why his family had to suffer, why prayers for protection had gone unanswered, and why justice had unfolded in a way that felt devastatingly unfair. Todd's admission of spiritual anger resonated with many who have faced similar trials, though few endure them under the scrutiny of fame. His honesty lifted the veil on a truth many fear to acknowledge. Even the strongest believers can wrestle with faith when life takes an unexpected and painful turn. Todd said that in those early days, he struggled to pray at all. Every word felt heavy. Every attempt at connection felt hollow. But as days turned into weeks, he slowly rediscovered what faith meant when stripped of privilege, comfort, and control. He explained that prison forced him into a space where he could no longer rely on the distractions that had once filled his days. There were no cameras, no business obligations, no household responsibilities, and no luxury of avoidance. He had to confront himself, his choices, his fears, and his faith. He said that although the first night was filled with despair, it also became the foundation for the spiritual rebuilding that followed. He realized that faith is not proven in seasons of ease, but in moments when every comfort has been weeks after his arrival, a moment when he began to release his anger and shift into acceptance. He said that through conversations with chaplains and other inmates, he began understanding that everyone arrives in prison with a story of heartbreak, regret, or betrayal. He realized he was not alone, and that suffering does not have to isolate, but can instead connect people through shared humanity. This shift did not erase the pain of his experience, but it allowed him to navigate it with greater clarity. His anger at God transformed into a plea for understanding. That plea eventually became a dialogue. And that dialogue slowly became a renewed sense of purpose that surprised even him. He discovered that faith is not about receiving immediate answers, but about trusting through uncertainty. His time in prison challenged him to deepen that trust, even when circumstances felt unbearable. But Todd's emotional struggle was not limited to the confines of his cell. The hardest part, he said, was being separated from his wife Julie, who was serving her own sentence in a different facility. He spoke about lying awake at night, wondering how she was coping, questioning whether she was safe, warm, or emotionally protected. The thought of her suffering while he could do nothing to help added another layer of anguish to his prison experience. He described it helplessness as one of the most painful emotions he had ever endured. Todd also worried constantly about his children. He knew that Savannah had taken on responsibilities far beyond her years, becoming the primary caregiver for her younger brother and supporting their parents' ongoing legal battles. He feared the impact of a situation on their emotional well-being and how the constant public scrutiny would affect their futures. He said the guilt of being physically absent from them weighed heavily on him every single day. Despite the hardship, Todd insists that prison changed him in profound ways. He described learning patience in an environment where time moves slowly. He learned humility in a place where everyone is stripped of status. He learned gratitude for small things he once took for granted. But most importantly, he said he learned to listen, reflect, and reconnect with the parts of himself he had lost in the chaos of fame, responsibility, and personal conflict. Todd also used his time to help others, offering emotional support to inmates who struggled with issues ranging from addiction to grief. He said he found meaning in encouraging people who felt forgotten by the world, and by helping them rediscover their own sense of worth. These moments of connection, he explained, reminded him that purpose can be found even in the darkest places. Still, Todd does not minimize the pain of what he endured. He acknowledges that some days were unbearable. He remembers moments when the isolation felt suffocating, when he questioned whether life would ever resemble normalcy again, and when he wondered whether reconciliation within his family was possible. He admits that some wounds remain raw, particularly those involving fractured relationships and public controversies that erupted during his incarceration. However, he believes that the man who entered prison is not the same man who emerged. He speaks with a sense of calm that was rarely seen during his television years. The confidence that once bordered on bravado has softened into a quieter form of strength. The humor that once masked his stress has been replaced with a deeper, more reflective emotional awareness. Upon his release, Todd said he carried the memories of that first painful night as a reminder of how far he has come. He no longer cries himself to sleep, but he also does not forget the vulnerability of that moment. He views it as the beginning of a transformation that he never expected, but one he now believes was necessary for his spiritual and emotional growth. Todd has become an advocate for criminal justice reform, speaking openly about the realities of prison life that the public rarely sees. He argues that the justice system needs compassion, accountability, and transparency, and that incarceration should focus more on rehabilitation than punishment. His first-hand experience has given him a voice he intends to use for those who cannot speak for themselves. As Todd works to rebuild his life, reconnect with his family, and reclaim a sense of normalcy, he continues to share his journey with honesty. His story is not one of perfection or resolution, but of resilience, faith, and the complicated path toward healing. He acknowledges that he is still repairing relationships, still processing the trauma of his experience, and still learning to forgive himself and others. But he is also hopeful. He believes that every season of suffering holds the possibility of transformation. He sees his journey as a testament to endurance, a reminder that even in moments of despair, there is room for redemption. And he remains committed to using his story to help others navigate their own struggles, knowing that vulnerability creates connection and that honesty can open doors to healing. Todd Chrisley's admission that he cried himself to sleep on his first night in prison is not a confession of weakness, but a reflection of what it means to be human. It is the story of a man who faced the collapse of his world, wrestled with faith, confronted his fears, and emerged with a renewed commitment to hope. It is a reminder that even in the darkest night, the possibility of sunrise remains.